Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics, a podcast dedicated to exploring how things get places and the people who get them there. We'll talk with logistics and supply chain leaders about innovation, industry trends, and the future of the logistics business. Now, here's your host, Joe Lynch.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is the micro-fulfillment opportunity with my friend Julien Seret. How's it going, Julien?
Doing good, Joe. How are you?
Doing great. This is a very interesting topic. I'm looking forward to it. We went and talked too long about your company, so I'm glad we finally hit record. Julien, please introduce yourself and your company.
Sure. So I'm Julien Seret. I work at Attabotics. So I'm in charge of an activity, a specific business model at Attabotics, which is delivering a full service. Initially, we are a robotics company. We have built the first 3D storage system that allows you to have a very high density storage and very fast retrieval system for order preparation in e-commerce and retail replenishment. And we have several business models. The initial one has been to sell our systems to anyone who wants to optimize their warehouse operations when it comes to storing and retrieving goods. And the other business model that we're developing now is a full service one. So it's not selling our system, it's proposing a storage, picking, packing, and delivery service. All this combined. So we operate warehouses. We take a lease on warehouses in our high density areas. We hire people. We install our system. We leverage our robotics, obviously. We're going to see today, hopefully, that's our main differentiation. And we deliver. So we're partnering with retailers, brands, and 3PLs to offer same-day delivery and storage in urban areas. And so I'm heading this part, coming from SoftBank. So I'm fairly new to Attabotics.
So before you go there, it's interesting you mentioned Attabotics. So how do you spell that again? Attabotics. And where are they based?
So we're based in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada.
Very nice, very nice. And you were showing me the system, and eventually we'll bring this up on the screen. So those of you who are listening to podcasts, you need to, at some point, get to the video of this. But I think most of us, when you hear robotics and warehouse, you have to envision something in your mind, which is, okay, it picks something up, puts it in a box, no big deal. The system that you guys sell is, it reminds me of, I said space age when we were talking before. It's a very interesting system, and I've never seen one like this. And we'll describe it. We'll show some pictures of it here at some point. But it's not your average robot. It is not the robot that picks one thing up and puts it over. It is very sophisticated, but also very efficient. I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, I interrupted you just because I wanted to make sure people understood when you say robot that it's just not one robot. It's a system of robots.
It's a system, indeed. It's a system, yeah.
It's like, do you ever see Star Trek where they had the Borg? It looks like the Borg, except it's not evil. It's nice. So anyway, Julien, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? That is not a New York accent, I hear. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, obviously you can hear that. I'm from France. I'm doing my best to try and improve my English accent, but can't hide it.
Your English is better than my French, trust me.
So I came to the US about 5 years ago. I grew up in my dad was in the military, in the French Air Force, actually. So we moved all around in different countries.
What countries did you live in?
So France, Germany. I lived a little bit in the US before, when I was younger, in Mexico as well. So a lot of different areas, and even inside France, in many different cities. We're moving kind of I think for all the kids who have parents in the Air Force or the military, it's the same thing. Like every other year or 3 years, we're moving around. So I think it gave me this appetite for a lot of different languages and a lot of different industries. So I'm an industrial engineer by training, and I went pretty early to the Silicon Valley back in 2000. Started to work in the semiconductor industry in a very large company called STMicro, mostly in technical business development. Already confronted to some logistics issue. I mean, everybody's talking about the supply chain constraints in the semiconductor industry. Was involved in some planning constraints and things like that. And then I had the opportunity to join a very small organization, almost co-founding a robotics startup in the telepresence industry. So very, very different from what we're going to talk about today, but we're going to see the connection. And then that company was acquired by another company building bigger robots that got acquired by SoftBank. So from an idea of going to a very small, to living the startup life, boom, I ended up at SoftBank owning a global product for all new robotics initiatives and all new robotics, all new business models involving robotics. We're going to see today that robotics is all about adoption and it's about creative business models. So I've been active in industries such as ag tech, retail automation, commercial cleaning. And there's always a constant, which is how do we, one, it's about making processes more efficient with robotics. But very often it's about other benefits, And today we're going to talk about, speed that we need. It's not about saving on labor. It's very often about speed, and for logistics in particular, it's about density. So anyway, from SoftBank. At SoftBank, at some point, we started to invest in a lot of logistics and warehouse automation companies. And my task was to create new business models based on those portfolio companies and third-party companies. So quite clearly, when we were thinking about creating a new business model and a go-to-market in the US, it was obvious that micro-fulfillment was already a big thing. That was about 3-4 years ago now. And it's a big thing because if you want to move the needle in logistics today, usually it happens closer. I mean, the cost is higher when you start moving things individually. And transportation is a very big topic. So if you want to improve logistics overall, you need to improve this last mile delivery process. And you could think of robotics there, but it's not really how you're going to make it happen. The main thing that you need to change is where you store things. So I developed this with a team at SoftBank, and I had to select the best and the highest density storage company and technology. And I selected Attabotics at the time with my team. And that's how the adventure with Attabotics started.
So when and why did you join them? You switched teams.
Yeah, I did. So at some point at SoftBank, everybody's heard about what happened with WeWork and things like that. So we decided to pause a little bit on some of the high CapEx initiatives and restructured. And I went back to working on ag tech and clean tech initiatives with my team. But deep in me, I had felt that this was really a super transformative initiative. Micro-fulfillment really has the potential to change the way we shop for greater service and for lower impact on our lives. Lower impact in terms of congestion in cities, better service because we have the possibility to deliver things same day, and lower impact on the planet because ultimately we have the opportunity to change the carbon footprint of this whole thing. So it wasn't hard for Scott Gravel, the founder of Attabotics, with whom I had worked a lot before at SoftBank, to convince me to join and lead this initiative.
Very nice. So when did you join?
About a year ago. It's been 11 months now, so yeah.
And so it's interesting. Before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about Calgary, and I just mentioned I just talked to David Lynch, who's from Calgary, and I've got another guy on my list, Mike Allen, I'm going to talk to from Calgary. And all of a sudden, Calgary's become this. I mean, I know it's one of the more successful, if not the most wealthiest province over there, I think. And all of a sudden, there's all this tech there. And it's funny because I think we're used to the idea from the United States. You go, well, of course, there's Silicon Valley, there's San Francisco, Austin. There's traditional places, Huntsville and Detroit get overlooked sometimes, but we have a lot of tech just because of the businesses we're in. Calgary's a new one, but it seems like a good one. It seems like there's a lot of companies growing up there.
Yeah, so there are many interesting phenomena with Calgary. So first, there's very highly skilled workforce. Historically, coming from the oil and gas industry, we've all heard that the oil and gas industry has had ups and downs.
But it throws off a lot of cash, which invested into that.
so that and it attracts a lot of very highly skilled people. And the truth is that for logistics, but robotics in particular, we need hardware engineers, software engineers, electronics engineers. We need a lot of very highly skilled folks that we're very happy to transition from the oil and gas to another high tech sector. So we had. Well, as at Attabotics, the explanation is the availability of these skilled folks, and then Calgary in particular has a specific status when it comes to logistics, with in particular with the airport status there. And overall, there's been a lot of dynamism in the community. Very high tech environment, very open. Government very open to a lot of high-tech initiatives. So definitely a great environment to start and grow a company in robotics and logistics.
Yep, and I would say, we all know that the supply chains are going to become shorter, and we're going to talk a little bit about getting that fulfillment closer to consumers, but we're also getting our supply chain shorter, which is going to be better for the environment. We know we have challenges with. We obviously lived through those challenges at the ports in the last few years, but also there's challenges in Asia in general. So we're going to bring this stuff home. And what's really been successful for a long time, and we overlook it, is our partners in Canada and in Mexico. We're going to do a lot more business with those countries. If you're in the U.S., you better get used to it. And by the way, I'm in Michigan, where the vast majority of the cross-border and the activity is an automotive back and forth Detroit, Windsor. But I think you're going to see a lot more of that cross-border going forward. And it makes so much sense because we have, like, if I was to open a fulfillment center on the border near Canada, it might make sense that delivers to the U.S. We're going to have to change the laws a little bit. But from a carbon footprint perspective and from I don't need to just keep building locations, we're going to have to get better at all these cross-border activities.
And I think it's driven also, it's fascinating what's happening in manufacturing. It's driven also by the a trend that we call mass customization. So we need things faster, but we also don't want to avoid waste and want to have products as customized as possible. So there's this idea of late customization and repatriation of manufacturing. And we see that firsthand. I mean, we use for our own manufacturing, our storage system to build kits to be able to manufacture and build our robots as fast as possible based on demand. And we're seeing our customers using our tech, not only for, I would say, traditional downstream logistics, but also for manufacturing, to prepare kits and be able to build the systems last minute based on demand.
Right. So we're going to get into the meat of this, which is the micro-fulfillment opportunity. But first, Julien, you're a Frenchman living here in North America, back and forth to Calgary and San Francisco. What do you miss about Paris when you are here in North America?
Yeah, I think I was reading the press recently about our this high-speed train initiative that we have in California and all that. I think I miss the connection that you have in Europe with capitals or very different environments, just like 1 hour away.
Everything's close.
in high-speed train. And that's a good connection with logistics, actually. I think there's a huge opportunity in the US. I mean, it was the country of the train at some point. I think I miss the everything closed thing, but also I miss the train.
Right.
I'm traveling so often, I'm spending a ton of time, a little bit less with COVID, but still a ton of time in the airport.
Oh, yeah, that's no fun. So you want to get on a high-speed train and go from San Francisco to Calgary, like that, and without the hassle.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the thing. And then I'm just back from a few days of vacations over there also. I think I'm missing this pastry that you have in the morning, the croissant and pain au chocolat and all these things.
We can't reproduce that here. That is a French thing.
you find it here, but it's like probably 10 times the price it is there, and
probably more caloric when it's in the U.S. too, from what I can gather.
But I don't want to make it feel like I would prefer to go back to Paris. I mean, the U.S. is such an exciting environment to be. We were so blessed to be living there.
And you're Canadians too.
Yeah. North America overall is fascinating for dynamism. Canada is interesting for being kind of the good. I don't know if it's the right term, but an interesting balance between European mindset, welfare, etc., and the dynamism of North America in general.
I have one of my old roommate from college is from Canada, and I always say that you guys are always in Canada more kind of attuned with. They're closer to North, and they are North America, and they're close to the United States, but kind of always in tune with Europe, where we are less so. Anyway, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about micro-fulfillment. So why do I even have to care about micro-fulfillment? First off, what is micro-fulfillment? Why should I even care?
Yeah, so it's coming from, there are many reasons to adopt micro-fulfillment, but as far as we are concerned, the big trend that we see is the need for same and next day delivery. You can argue about the percentage of products that will be delivered that way.
That.
we all want that, and there are many benefits. It's not, and I'm not talking about the 15-minute delivery that's very popular in the press these days, but really about just getting things same or next day. I was operating a lot in Asia Pacific and Europe before, and it's about 50% of everything that's getting delivered either same or next day. In the US in 2000 was 30% according to McKinsey. And it's growing. And this year, in 2022, still according to McKinsey, 70% of companies getting ready to offer that level of service. So whether we like it or not, it's a phenomenon. It's
what consumers want.
It's happening, and it's not just another service that like all of a sudden we need or don't really need. Actually, there are many things associated to this service level that are intrinsically very, very good. First, for e-commerce, when you deliver with that speed, you have a much lower return rate, and that's super key.
If I could offer something up here just to set the table a little bit. 10, 15 years ago, if I was wanted to do some fulfillment, I would say I want one location, maybe in Indiana, because it's one day to 65% of the U.S., 2 days to another. And I might, if I was really successful, say, I'm going to get a warehouse in Indiana. Maybe I'll get one somewhere out west, maybe in Reno, right? And that would be it. That does not support same day, next day. So now all of a sudden we have to get that inventory. If I'm going to do same day, next day, I have to have that inventory close to the consumers. And before we hit record, we were talking about this, is let's just say we're talking about San Francisco. I can't go to San Francisco and say I need 1 million square feet of warehouse space. That is not going to come very easily. But what I can do is get a much smaller piece. So what would you say a micro-fulfillment warehouse? What is the size normally on that?
So it's dictated by actually density of demand. It all comes from there. So you're right. The logic is I can't do same day if I don't have my inventory in the urban location I want to deliver at. So from there, what's the space that's available for me to best organize my delivery routing? And if you want to have an efficient delivery, you need to be located very close to your customers. And you need to have in a 20-mile radius enough demand to load your vans with more than 150 orders. So that it all comes from there. So then we could say, hey, if you're lucky, maybe you're going to find a 100,000 square feet location that's perfectly
still a big
suited
location.
for that. But is it available? Does it happen? Well, what we're finding, and we're going to talk about how we're deploying those sensors, but what we're finding is that in terms of real estate, there isn't any available area above even 20,000 square feet. I mean, it's really hard to find, but you find a ton of them very well located below 20,000 square feet. So that's kind of the sweet spot that we found. But again, in terms of definition, I think the way to better position it is centrally located where my demand is. And it can vary a little bit, but it's all based on actually density of population. So it goes down to being in a very high density area, and because of that, it's usually below 20,000 square feet because that's the real estate that you can find.
And so this is the when we first talked, I was like, well, what does a robotics company care about micro-fulfillment versus regular fulfillment? And then you explained that your robots, I don't even want to call it robots, it's a system of robots, is all about maximizing the efficiency and so you can use that density. So describe a little bit about how you guys help micro-fulfillment get more out of their locations.
Of course, yeah. So you need a warehouse in this urban environment, and you're limited in space. And you need to deliver those orders in a very effective manner so that same-day delivery is affordable. So in order to do that, you need to store inventory locally in this small area. Now, you could say I'm going to be very selective and I'm going to take just 5% of my inventory and position it there. And I'm going to direct my e-commerce website so that people just select this service level for these SKUs. The problem with that is that you end up having a majority of split shipments. So people order one thing from this urban environment and one other thing that's not located there, that it's in a remote area. So in this 20,000 square feet that I was mentioning before, you need to feed a lot of SKUs.
Wait, so split shipments are bad. Why?
So split shipments, it's the definition is that you're going to split something from one warehouse, and in the same order, you have a request for an item that's coming from another warehouse. So all of a sudden, you're breaking the rule of logistics of aggregating as much as possible. You need to ship from two different locations, and that's totally defeating the purpose. The unit economics is no longer interesting, and the customer is not super happy because there's two shipments.
More carbon in the environment too, right?
And yeah, overall a ton of inefficiency. So you need, the reason why you need a high density is that you need to position a high number of SKUs in that warehouse. And if you want to do that, you need to use as much as possible those 20,000 square feet. So that's what we're doing and that's a connection with robotics. You need a high density. You need to use every cubic foot of this warehouse. So you need to use not storage in 2 dimensions, but in 3 dimensions up to the roof, and again use every single cubic foot. And I'm going to share a video of how that happens. I think that's.
Before you share that, I want to just point this out. Guys, if you think about the average warehouse where you have all these shelves and you're walking up and down those aisles, get that out of your head, because that is not what these guys are delivering. They're delivering, it looks like a cube that can be a number of different shapes, but it goes as high as you need. It can go right up to the ceiling practically. And it has, get these bins that are traveling. They're almost like miners going up and down into the mine shaft, except it's not a mine, and picking stuff up. Automatic retrieval systems, and it's super impressive. So if you're listening to the podcast, we'll do the best we can to describe this, but if you can, take a look at the video. So Julien, please share that video so we can look at it.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen now.
And again, this is a different application in my mind for robots, or a system of robots, in that it's not about getting more efficiency day to day, which it does do, but it's all about getting density.
Yeah, as you were saying, Joe, we've designed the first 3D storage technology that's leveraging every cubic foot of space available in a warehouse. I'm going to play this video now. So our inspiration comes from nature. Leafcutter ants store things in 3 dimensions around vertical shafts.
Wait, so for those of you who aren't seeing, it's just a whole bunch of ants carrying leaves around, and you see how efficient and effective they are, and they all seem to love their job.
So yeah, and they're really exploiting all the space available in 3 dimensions. So what we do is that you can imagine typical storage with 2D shelves, with aisles and shelves. So we compacted that into 3D structures with robots evolving at the top of the structure. So the structure can be as high as 30 feet, or it's not even limited in height, but we can go to the up to the ceiling of the warehouse. And we have these robots diving into vertical shafts. And I'm going to pause the video here and putting away here on the video the bin that they were carrying and retrieving another bin. So they're evolving in the 3D structure. There's no aisle, there's just vertical shafts that allow the robot to have access to every single SKU stored in those bins. The bins can be split in different partitions, so you can really store a lot of SKUs in a typical system. I'm going to play the video again. So once we've put away the bin that we were using before, we're retrieving another one in which there's an item that we need for a particular order. And then we're going to see the robot going to the bottom layer of the structure. And that's literally, I'm going to pause here, it's literally a sortation layer. So we're doing 2 things with this structure and with this system. We're compacting storage, but we're also getting rid of sortation. And for people who are familiar with logistics and warehouse, intra-logistics in warehouses, sortation can take a lot of space because it's conveyors positioned in a 2D environment and taking a lot of your square footage. So with this sortation layer at the bottom, we're able to sequence the products and present them to a human picker. Could be also a robotic picker, but a human picker that can now pick the items that are needed for the orders. Our interface for picking is very super intuitive. It's using all the principle of pick to light systems, and it's guided by instructions that are based on drawings and avoiding. You don't even need to speak English to use this system.
Right, and if I could make a point here is I'm watching the video here for those of you who don't get to, it's basically bringing these bins or bringing retrieving and then bringing to an operator who's able to easily do this work. So they're not running around, they're not walking miles, they're sorting, doing the kind of the human work that's necessary. And I guess it's really an impressive system because, again, you're making life so much easier for the operators. And also you're getting so much more density out of your location because there's not all that sortation space. There's not all those aisles. And by the way, nobody's getting on a ladder and having to go halfway to the ceiling to check on some inventory.
That's a very good summary, Joe. We fall overall in the category of systems that we call ASRS, Automated Storage and Retrieval Systems, which do 2 things. They usually go higher in density than manual shelves, and they allow you to avoid to walk to every single product that you need to pick on shelves. So it's really about the density and fast retrieval and fast order preparation. And with robotics at Attabotics, we've pushed that to the highest level. In terms of density, we have a reduction factor of 85%. So anything that would have required before, let's say 100,000 square feet, now fits in 15,000 square feet. And that's really the key element. When I was saying we only have 20,000 square feet in a warehouse in an urban environment, that's really key to be able to position as many SKUs as possible, right? Now we can store 5-6 times more SKUs than in with the manual system.
So let me just kind of clarify here. So like, let's just say I own a warehouse and a micro-fulfillment warehouse, and I've got 100,000 square feet, and I've got a lot of business. I have a number of different customers, and I'm getting full, and I'm thinking I have to move or get a new location. But if I get a new location, I have to decide, do I want to run 2 locations or get one bigger one? You could come in and save me 85% of that space. And does that even work with multi-tenant? I mean, if I've let's just say 30 different customers, can it work?
Yeah, of course, and that's really one of the key principles that we want to exploit with the service that we're offering.
My rent didn't go up. I more or less doubled the amount of customers.
So
not doubled. I can.
So our customers can use our technology in several ways. One thing that we're noticing is that it's not so much necessarily. I mean, it's of course about cost reduction when it comes to the price I'm paying for my lease and the time I'm saving when retrieving orders in terms of labor. That's one parameter. But one of the key parameters as well is that I don't want to change to a different building. So when people are buying our system, they're like, well, I've got this current 200,000 square feet building. I've got my business expanding. I need more space for my business. So how can I make the best out of my current building? And that's where that's when we jump in, and that's a typical situation where they pass an order for our system. They're able to do 5x to 6x on their storage capacity. So no need to change to another building, no need to change my logistical flow. I can just expand the capacity of my current buildings.
Yeah, and you think of cities that when you have the density for opening a micro-fulfillment center, and that requires density. You're not going to get them all in the country, right? That's the New York City, that's Chicago, that's San Francisco. That is big in the inner city. Getting a ton of space is wildly expensive, and to your point, maybe not even available. So getting the very most out of that location is absolutely crucial. And again, the old model for warehousing and fulfillment was I'm going to go in Indiana and I'm going to be 65% of the population's one day. That's not good enough anymore because we want same day, next day. So we're going to have these micro-fulfillment centers, and they're going to be in urban areas or suburban areas, and they do have to be cost effective. And when you have that high rent and that limited space, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Let me quickly continue on the video here just to show how flexible the system is. So here you can see that we're compatible with many different geometries. It doesn't have to be a cube. It could be a rectangle. It could be an L shape. So we're really able to go as high as we want, like in terms of using the clear height of your current building. We've got systems higher than 30 feet today in operations, and we can also have a very small footprint system. And here you can see one that's typically what would fit in a micro-fulfillment building. You just need maybe 1,000, 2,000 square feet, depending on the building you have, and you can fit the system. So it's really flexible, and it allows us to use every single square foot and cubic foot of either our customers' current buildings or the buildings that we find for our own service.
How long, like if I wanted to set that up, how long would that take to set up?
So if you're buying the system from us, the deployment time goes as low as I would say 3 months realistically. Usually the longest would be the permitting time. You need to get authorization to install that from the county, from the fire marshals. You need to obtain permission to install the system, but it's much more flexible than any automation that you could consider in the past. For example, there's a parameter which is how even your floor is, and we can adapt the structure so that even if you've got a 2 inches different from one side of your floor to another, we're still able to install the system. So we've got among the shortest lead time in the industry. And that's actually a very good question related to our capacity in Calgary to manufacture our system. We don't rely on third-party rack system manufacturers. we build our own aluminum structures because we have this awesome manufacturing capacity in Calgary. We've got this manufacturing knowledge there. We're able to manufacture our system. So in terms of scalability, we are the fastest on the market because we have these internal things.
That's fantastic. It's really impressive. And again, guys who are just listening, just envision this giant box that is on the screen right now, and then on the sides you have where the people would interact with this. So how generally do people react to the people who are currently working at the warehouse? Do they enjoy working with these systems?
Yeah, totally. So it's, in automation, in general, there are several topics, right? One is efficiency, but the one very important point, and I've seen that in many different industries, maybe commercial cleaning, agriculture tech, etc. It's the acceptance of technology and how it improves my daily work, not only from a bottom line or top line standpoint, but what are my working conditions? And if we think about logistics, storage in warehouses, working conditions are far from ideal. We hear that a lot in the press, and we see it firsthand at Attabotics. But working conditions are not ideal, and there are several elements. One, we're making the job much more interesting because we're limiting the very painful work that's usually required to pick something very high on the shelf, something heavy in the shelf.
I wouldn't want to get on that. I haven't seen it lately, but I know people get on ladders to do inventory. You guys this can manage inventory better than the manual systems?
Of course, yeah. The system knows at any point of time, real time, what is in the storage.
So I would think they would love to. I said it before we hit record, and I really truly feel this way. Is if I have if let's just say one of your child said, "I want to go work in a warehouse," you'd be like, "Well, you want to be part of a warehouse that has all the cool technology, so you can actually be part of the supply chain versus going into a location where you feel like you're just a strong back." And we do. I've had other people talk about warehousing technology. You got to make that job easier, but also how do you attract people, especially young people who are doing that work, when they're used to every day walking around with their phones and they're used to high-tech stuff in their daily life, and then you go, okay, you're going to have this drudgery job where you walk around with boxes all day.
Right. So yeah, it's totally right. I think it's very well known in the industry now. There's a shortage of labor for this kind of work. So it's not even a matter of saving on labor. What's really accelerating the trend of automation is that we just can't find people who are ready to work in the middle of nowhere, very far from where they're living, and just the working conditions are far from ideal. The other thing that's very interesting, and that's the link with micro-fulfillment, is that because we are high density, we're able to locate those warehouses much closer to the urban environment, to where people live, to their community. So it's making overall working conditions less painful inside the warehouse, but also you're working in much closer to where you live.
Right. Maybe I could take a bus or a train if I was in Europe, but yeah, you're getting. One of the challenges, and I live kind of on the outskirts of the Detroit metro area, and it is harder to find. There's manufacturing out this way, mostly farms, but the manufacturing companies have to bus people in to come to these locations, and so they go to Flint or Detroit area to bus people out here, and that's ideally. If you have to take an hour bus ride, nobody wants that. You'd prefer to say, "Hey, I work at that micro-fulfillment warehouse. It's 6 blocks from my house. I walk over there."
Right.
So, I want to summarize some of this. So, covered a lot of ground here. So we're talking about the micro-fulfillment opportunity with my friend Julien Seret. So we talked a little bit about the same day, next day. We all know that's required, right? So that means we're going from the old school warehouses out in the middle of nowhere to newer, smaller fulfillment centers in the city, or in the suburbs. They're not going to be out in the sticks. And that gets that inventory close to the customer so we can support that same day, next day. But the problem is when I get into that urban or suburban area, I can't find locations, or the locations are ridiculously expensive. I'm not going to get that huge warehouse. So how do I make the most of my warehouse? And what you do is you go get one of these super high density systems that allow you to do a lot with a little.
Exactly. So we and once we have this nicely located warehouse close to demand, there's one point that we need to address. It's delivery. And what's fascinating is that things have been working. The industry has worked a lot in silos so far. Amazon notoriously is controlling a lot of the logistics ecosystem, but what's interesting is that what happens inside the warehouse has not necessarily been optimized for the delivery part. And when you look at it, 80% of your cost is on the delivery part. So if you really want to move the needle, and if you want to offer a same next day delivery capacity to brands, retailers, that remains affordable, because people are not ready to pay a fortune for that, you need to act on the delivery. And that's where the link is fascinating. We're not talking about robotics that's going to deliver to your doorsteps. Maybe one day it's going to work, but I've studied that deeply, and that's not going to happen overnight. We're talking about 20 years. The way you need to work is to apply the rules of logistics, and that's, if you want to reduce cost and optimize your process, you need to aggregate more. The way it works and the way Amazon works today is that you fill vans with a lot of orders. And that's how you achieve awesome unit economics. You need to be able to put more than 100, 150 orders in a van. And how do you do that? People talk a lot about the gig economy, and they make companies and people compete and try to lower the cost, just betting on the fact that people would want to be more aggressive on that cost. But what we think is that we need to have a more a deeper approach to that, and work on optimizing the routing and the aggregation of delivery. And again, you can't address it with the gig economy. What you need is a point of consolidation, so the Micro-Fulfilment center, from which you're going to start. And because it's well located, because you're very high density, because you have a lot of SKUs, you're able to have routes in a 20-mile radius, and have your van deliver in, let's say, in half a day, 100 to 150 orders. That's how you go below the $4 per order for each delivery. And that's how the warehouse that we're building today, the micro-fulfillment centers that we're building today, are totally optimized for the loading of the vans. Economies inside the warehouse and efficiencies inside the warehouse matter. We've seen that. But where you really move the needle is when you're able to load the van. And that's where we're using a second aspect of our technology. The first one is density. The second one is very fast access to every single SKU. So until the last moment, imagine you want to deliver same day, you've got a cutoff at 12 p.m. And you've got from, let's say, 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. to deliver all your orders. Until the last moment of the cutoff, you need to reorganize your routes to make sure they're totally optimized and your loading is optimized. And an order can drop at 11:58, and that order could change the way you are going to organize your route. So you need to be able to retrieve this order very fast. You can't process things in wave and optimize during the entire day. Now, you need to retrieve this order, get this order at the very last moment, and retrieve from your facility everything that you need to load the vans at 12 p.m. And that's where we're using not only density, but the very fast retrieval aspect of things, and the fact that we have this sortation layer that allows you to sequence everything to load the van in just less than 1 hour.
Right. No, I love that. And I think what if I could just reiterate in my own layman's terms here is first off, the gig economy is great, and we're all going to use the gig economy, but we need to drive the gig economy with the logistics efficiency that we've gotten used to, which to your point is, it's not about going and picking up one thing and say, yeah, I picked this up and I dropped it off at Julien's house. That is not efficient. What it's efficient is, I went to Julien's neighborhood and dropped off 30 packages, and then I went to the next neighborhood and dropped off 30 more. So we have to have the technology and the rigor and the efficiency that we're used to with the logistics world. We can use gig economy to do it, but we have to help them.
You're right. That's a good precision. Actually, it's not fundamentally the gig economy that is not working for that. It's the idea that we need one aggregation point. Gig economy can still be used, but we need this aggregation. It could be either a sortation center that's here, like the depot from USPS, or a micro-fulfillment center. But what we're saying is that without aggregation, on average, the gig economy can have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 orders in the same car at any given time, but you never reach a great unit economics with that level of aggregation.
Yeah, and when you talk about that, you talk about knocking the silos down. We have so many silos in our business, and the companies we serve, whether they're retailers or e-commerce, they expect that there are no silos between a warehouse and transportation. And so what you can do also is, if I get that late order, let's just say somebody says, if it's in by 2, it goes out by the end of the day. That means I have to kind of quickly get that order. Yours is being mined by a robot that picks it up, retrieves it in a minute, as opposed to I could say, Julien, go get that. And you say, God, that's all the way in the back of the warehouse. And I got to walk back there. And it's like a half a mile. And by the time you get back, assuming you picked it right, you missed the truck. And that's a problem, because now the next truck is no longer optimized because it's going out of its way. And so to make the transportation efficient as we can, we have to make the warehouse as efficient as we can. At knocking a silo down. So I want to summarize this, and I want to get your final thoughts on some of this. But we talked about the need for same day, next day. We talked about we need that inventory close to consumers, and then we need to make those very smaller locations, the micro-fulfillment centers, much more efficient. We have to get the density, and the way to get the density is with a system like you guys have at Attabotics. And one thing I wanted you to touch a little bit about is, you say you guys sell these systems. So who do you sell them to? Do you sell them to third-party logistics companies or retailers or e-commerce companies?
Yeah, brands, all of the above. The truth is that so it could be micro-fulfillment. It doesn't have to be micro-fulfillment, by the way. The majority of our current customers today just have a warehouse, and they're looking at optimizing their processes in that warehouse. Exactly. And it's really any industry. Today it's health and beauty, grocery.
You said auto parts is a good application.
Auto parts, fantastic example. At the end of the day, logistics is dealing with any single product. So I would say anything that fits in the bins is eligible for our technology. And we have the biggest bin of the market. So it's not going to be, if you're selling lawnmowers, for example, maybe that you're not going to store your lawnmowers there. But really, we've got a bin that is about 2 feet by 2 feet by 1 feet deep. So the truth is that more than 90% of anything that gets consumed,
most consumer products
in any environment can fit in there. So it's really not limited in terms of industry.
So you can sell it to a lot of different into a lot of different applications. And you mentioned you would also have your own locations. What about those?
Totally, and that's leading us to another point that's very important. It's multi-tenancy. What has happened in the logistics market today is that very few players, almost none, are really thinking of at the right level of aggregation. 3PLs have invested a lot in facilities for specific customers and have built custom supply chains that are arguably quite efficient. But what we're seeing is that except the top 3 and maybe a few more players, but let's say Walmart, Amazon, Target can probably have enough resources to build an efficient infrastructure. But if you need to be present if you want to offer same day or next day delivery to your customers, you need to have more than 60 locations, 70 locations nationwide. And very few brands can afford to operate these locations. And for several reasons. One is you need to have the financial resources to develop and deploy all these locations. And the other one is that even if you have the cash and to do that, you need to have the right level of aggregation, right? If you want to have the right unit economics, if you want to be able to reach like $4 per delivery in terms of cost of delivery at the last mile level. You need to be able to fill those vans.
Is that a threshold that seems to be in the industry? $4 or less is okay, but more is a problem.
Yeah, it's like if you use typically you can see that when you use I don't know, even if you ask Whole Food to deliver for you, you're going to pay $10. So you can think of how much what's the level of cost that they're facing. But overall today it's about $10 for same day delivery if you have even the facility to deliver it from. And if you're using a van, you could go below $4 if you're smart about the way you're aggregating orders. But if you have a small brand or even a mid-sized brand, and you're trying to deliver with your van in one urban environment, you're not going to have enough density of orders. So that's why multi-tenancy is key here. You don't need 1,000 different brands, but you need to aggregate with 10, 20, ideally 50 other brands, and then you have the right density. And then if you use micro-fulfillment in a wise way, you can compete with Amazon. So that's really what we're doing with multi-tenancy, high density, fast order preparation, and route optimization. We're providing an alternative for businesses to the Amazon service level. Some people could do that from the store, but it's highly inefficient. So it's really, today on the market, you have just two options, Amazon or your own store, but you don't have the right level of aggregation at the store level, and it's inefficient. So we're providing this alternative, and it has to be multi-tenant. So that's why we're offering this service.
So you mentioned when we were prepping that you guys are going to open some of your own locations. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So as I was saying, the roadmap is to cover the US. So we're preparing for 70 locations. As we speak, we're ready to open 2 of them, and we're going to start on the West Coast in Seattle and Los Angeles. We're planning to open that between the end of this year and the beginning of next, at the latest in Q1 2023, and then expanding. The good news is that we don't need an entire network immediately, just like Amazon has been opening different service level in different geographies.
Right, because this is all about the location. This is the geographic location is really the key.
Yeah. We see a fantastic connection with how marketing is evolving as well. Marketing is becoming much more localized. Brands are embarking on strategies to say, hey, I'm going to use an influencer marketing strategy in one particular location in LA, for example, and then gradually offer that service level to other locations. So brands are totally aligned with a progressive deployment, and we're following that trend.
Yep. So I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. I'm assuming you work with any warehouse management system?
Yeah, of course. So two things here. One, when our customers choose to buy our robotic system, we make that compatible with any of their warehouse systems. The other offer we have is a combination for the grocery market in particular, a combination of the storage system and the software systems needed to manage that. And in that case, we offer our own warehouse management system that we're going to connect to our customers' systems. So that's case number 2. And case number 3 is when we provide the full fulfillment service. We, of course, need our own warehouse management system and our own transportation system. The key part actually here is the connection, is breaking the silos and have a system that works across what happens inside the warehouse and what happens when we load the vans and on the road. So in that case, we provide our system and we connect it to our customers' e-commerce systems. We receive orders from them. Ultimately, that comes from the website. When you order something online, it comes to our customers' enterprise resource planning systems, and that system connects to our WMS or software system in general. So compatible with all situations, but in terms of WMS, to your point in particular, compatible with all WMSs when we sell our robotic system. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. I feel like this is really a glimpse into the future because I said before we hit record today that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if somebody said, well, I want to use robots, you'd say, well, maybe in a factory, right? An assembly plant. I'm from automotive. We've always used robots. But when you talk about warehouses, there was always this talk of someday robots will do this. But it wasn't, you didn't see it very much. We saw conveyor belts. We saw some robots in the Amazon facilities. I've been to some high-tech facilities. But what you guys have developed is really kind of, in my mind, beyond the conveyors, beyond that mindset. Really, it's the next generation. I mean, because it's so much more efficient with space. By the way, if I had all the money in the world and I open up a micro-fulfillment center, I don't know that I want a whole bunch of conveyor belts with people around it. I would much rather have what you guys have, which is utilizing all the space, not just on the floor, but to the ceiling.
Right. Yeah, I think what has happened lately is an acceleration of the adoption of robotics, and it's driven by several things. So we've talked about the efficiencies that you get, and there's a cost reduction aspect to it for labor and the space that you need. But it goes beyond that. It's that you need robotics to even consider a new business model. Without high density, you can't have micro-fulfillment. Without fast order retrieval, you can't load the van and offer same and next day delivery. And it's not something that is pushed by robotics and driven by cost only. It's driven by the need for higher service levels. And when you think about it, what we're really automating, it's not with e-commerce. I mean, it's not necessarily the job in the warehouse or in the retail store. It's you and I going to the retail store and pushing a cart and picking things and for grocery in this example, but for any purchase. So I think altogether it's pushed by more e-commerce certainly is pushing in a way the adoption of automation. And second is the need for a better service level, and ultimately a more efficient supply chain. And I think we've seen the effect of the heat waves recently and everything, the impact on carbon of supply chains. I think there's a fantastic opportunity of alignment, actually cost reduction, higher service levels, and lower carbon footprint are perfectly aligned. And I think that's one of the most fascinating things these days. If I reduce my carbon footprint, I'm going to reduce my cost as well, and it's going to be better for the planet, and it's going to be a high level of service. I think what we're developing is same day service, lower carbon footprint, at the same cost and lower impact than a 5-day delivery service with higher convenience and everything, and that's all enabled by robotics. Then robotics has benefited other things like lower cost of sensors, computing power, etc. But I think there's some more fundamental market trends that have pushed robotics further.
Right. Excellent. So, Julien, final thoughts on this big old topic. Put a bow on it.
Yeah, I think as I was just describing that's probably the most transformational thing that has happened lately when we consider automation, the repatriation of manufacturing, the fact that we want to offer a better level of service, we want to lower the carbon footprint, lower the costs, and it's just a perfect equation, a perfect alignment of planets these days between all these elements. It doesn't happen very often. Usually we get better service, but it's at the expense of one of the other things, the cost of the planet, or both. I think the fact that it's perfectly aligned these days is really the most exciting that is happening. Same day, I want to emphasize one thing. People think a lot of the 15-minute delivery, and it's very popular these days with the convenience stores delivering super fast. I think it's more profound than that. It's really about rationalizing the way everything gets routed as efficiently as possible to the consumption point. And it doesn't have to be we're not actually not targeting the 15-minute delivery thing, but just same day and next day delivery are perfectly aligned with, the objectives of all the stakeholders. We've talked about e-commerce in general, but it's also manufacturing. We've talked about car parts. Anything that needs to go to a certain consumption point can be leveraging these new trends of micro-fulfillment and automation to make our life in cities better.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Julien. What I'm going to do is I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile. I'll put a link to that video you showed us for anyone who wants to click through and see it. And I'll put a link to Attabotics and any other links you give me. But this is absolutely fascinating. I really do feel like you kind of gave us a glimpse into the future, because this feels inevitable, because we're going to want that. We're going to need high density for those micro-fulfillment to actually deliver what we want it to deliver.
Yeah, and thanks so much, Joe. And we'll be at all these shows related to micro-mobility, logistics, last mile delivery, etc., CSCMP, and all those shows in the coming weeks and months. So reach out on LinkedIn, on our website, and very happy to continue the conversation.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Julien.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward.
You've been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage in conversation with experts in the logistics field. For more details, visit thelogisticsoflogistics.com or follow Joe Lynch on LinkedIn.